welcome to episode 330 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian, having finished my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at @LMS_United. On Threads and Instagram, you can find me on School Librarians United and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Friends, it is now my pleasure to introduce our sponsor to the podcast, Junior Library Guild. What if I told you that there's a collection development service that can save you time and increase title circulation rates? Junior Library Guild does that and more. With their team of experienced media library specialists and publishing industry professionals, every title they recommend is vetted for my readers and organized into categories based on reading level and interest. Ultimately, Junior Library Guild helps my students foster a love of reading. Use the code UNITED15 to get 15 free books in your very first shipment. And now for today's episode, Young Teen Lit, and my conversation with Christina Chatel and Marcia Kochel. I'm so excited. Christina Chatel, Marcia Kochel, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, we're excited to be here.
Friends, we are in for a treat today. We've got truly experts who are coming together. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us about your library, the grades you serve, and some of the programs you offer.
I'm Marcia Kochel. I am working in Decatur, Georgia. I'm at Druid Hills Middle School. We have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, about 1,000 students. And I'm big on book clubs. I've had about 14 or 15 book clubs every year that meet at lunch and after school, and lots of kids get involved in those. I also have a first period class called Library Leaders, which has been one of the best things I do, and getting kids to basically come up with all the displays and ideas and projects that we do in our library.
Well, and friends, you're in for a treat because both Marcia and Christina have been guests on the podcast before. And so to learn more about Marcia's program, definitely take a look at the links in the show notes and our conversation, episode 286, Middle School Manifesto. And you'll learn a little bit more about all of the things that Marcia does in her amazing program, which leaves us with Christina. Christina, welcome back to the podcast.
So great to be here. I love listening to the summer episodes because everybody's like so relaxed. Amy, you sound so relaxed. We're all our best selves this time of year.
We're getting decent sleep. You know what I'm saying? I if you're getting more than 5 hours of sleep, you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Christina, you were originally on the show, actually, episode 295, We Need Short Middle Grade Books. Give us a little idea of what it is you do during the school year.
Yes, so I am going into my 13th year at Boland Park and Smith Middle Schools in Troy, Michigan, just down the road from Amy. And I have about 800 students at my one school, around 600 at the other school. One of them, we're actually building a new school behind it. So new Smith Middle School is being built, and it should open in 2026 fall, which means at the end of this school year, I get to pack up Smith and move to New Smith, and then Boland, my other school, gets to move to Old Smith. So I get to pack up 2 libraries at the end of the school year next year. I know, it's crazy. But in my other episode that I was in, I talked to you about my Troy Berry program. So my school is grades 6 to 8. And the Troy Berry program is our way of really encouraging our students to love reading.
You two have a lot in common in terms of the passion that you have for this grade level. And this is where I really rely on experts like you because I have never taught library at the middle grade level. So you're something of a mystery to me. And I learned so much from these conversations. But I will say one thing also. Simply because Christina has mentioned packing up her libraries, don't be surprised. We have interviewed a librarian about how to pack up a library, and that is in our episode 220, Packing Up with Harry Coffill, who packed up a library and went through all of the details. I've packed up a library, except I did it during the pandemic, which made it a little bit easier because the kids weren't there. But in our end of year playlist, so you can access that episode 220, Packing Up, and our end of year playlist. So, but thank you very much. Wow. So, Christina, I wish you well. I imagine, though, knowing at this point of the school year that at the end of the school year, this isn't new information, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's not, and I think it is going to color my purchasing decisions this school year. But it is something that it has been in the back of my mind, and I have started the weeding. So this is going to be a year of weeding for me. Do I really need this? Does it need to come with me?
I think that's fantastic because we do a lot of what we have on our radar is going to direct how we spend our energy. Best that you know about it now and not have that information sprung on you, in February, because I think that you can make some really great decisions moving forward. You both have been on the podcast. This is fantastic. And friends, I strongly encourage you to go back. There are links in the show notes. Marcia, you and I had a conversation in August of 2024, so basically, 11 months ago. And then, Christina, you and I had a conversation in November. So let me just ask, Christina, did you listen to Marcia's episode before you and I recorded?
I did. And I think I actually talked about her in your episode because I talked about how she wrote this fantastic article and I felt like I didn't have a place for mine because she wrote the same things that I wrote. So yes, I knew about her ahead of time. And then after the episode, I went back and I looked at the show notes from Marcia's episode and I stalked Marcia. So I looked up her information. And I think I tried contacting her 2 different ways, social media and then email. And we just immediately clicked. I don't know, Marcia, I don't know if you want to jump in.
No, it was great. I specifically asked Amy to, put that in writing. I need people to help me. I want to start a movement. I want these books to happen, but I knew I didn't know where to begin, and I wasn't the person to do it by myself. So having somebody who was equally excited about it has been amazing. And Christina and I, we just clicked. We've never met in person. We Zoom, we text, we email, and even during the school year, we probably Zoom every couple of weeks, and we keep a robust Google Doc going of our to-do list and a whole Google folder of documents. But we do a lot together, even though we are both full-time in school libraries and trying to squeeze it in.
Truly hoping that you two get to meet in person at some point. So I have a couple things that I want to go back to. First of all, stalking. When you are a school librarian hoping to meet up with another school librarian you admire, I also call that stalking. It is not stalking. This is about building our remote PLN.
Networking.
We are networking, friends. And especially when you realize, Christina, Chatel, and I think our schools are less than 2 miles apart. We never see each other at Michigan because we don't. We're about 2 miles apart. We don't. But this is a great way to build those connections. So another thing, friends, that Christina mentioned about trying to reach out to somebody and being a little intentional about it. It is hard because you don't want to come off as looking like spam. You don't want to come across looking as sort of aggressive. You don't want the person to think that you are trying to sell something. So, and I've been told that having a podcast that's called School Librarians United still looks really super spammy because it looks like you're a company soliciting librarians, and I really am not. So no, I'm just glad that you were persistent, and the two of you, again, I had not met Marcia until I was at GLMA Summer Institute because I was aware of you, but it was only through Robbie Barber. I met her back in, let's see, that would have been July of 2019 at ISTE in Philadelphia. But I'll tell you what, I was at GLMA Summer Institute in 2024. She grabbed me by the hand and said, there's somebody I need you to meet. Robbie Barber insisted I meet Marcia and say, you have to have her on your show. And Robbie, you are right as always. Ask you to, because we've got a school librarian in Michigan, a school librarian in Georgia. I am super curious to know when the two of you became aware of each other, because your independent efforts and passions have crisscrossed for a while. Only did we find out eventually you have these shared passions.
Well, I think that I became aware of Marcia when I read her Manifesto and then listened to the episode of School Librarians United. And then once I reached out to her, we were able to communicate over Google Meet, and it all just went really quickly. I think by December, so my episode with you, Amy, was in November, and I think by December, end of December, we had launched our Blue Sky, hadn't we, Marcia?
Yeah, I think we had one Google Meet, and we just laid out a plan and came up with what we wanted to do. We both had written for Teen Librarian Toolbox for School Library Journal, and then we both were on your podcast. So we were just following each other around. So once we found each other, we forged ahead.
I kind of feel like a matchmaker. I'm sorry. When you realize you have two people who feel this strongly about something, but the wonderful thing is that rather than becoming competitive in which one of you can attract the larger audience or get your ideas published, this isn't about who had dibs on the idea. Like, it seems to me like something this important needs more than one person to champion it. Champions of a cause which formed not because you're colleagues, because you're not, all right? You've never met, but you both share the same goals when it comes to young teen lit.
Mm-hmm. I think at first what we started with was, what do we call it? So we knew we wanted there to be some sort of publishing category for this age group, for ages 12 to 15. And so we brainstormed names, we brainstormed hashtags, we got our social media set up, we got a website set up, and then we started brainstorming what are the books that we would put into this category. So we've been creating graphics. We launched our 5 pillars of Young Teen Lit on Blue Sky, and then followed that up with some articles that we've written together since then. And we just seem to work very well together over the Google Docs. It just co-writing, editing, cutting, revising. I think each of us have different strengths that helps us to really work together.
So I have to ask you, Marcia, how did you feel when you realized, there's now 2 of you working together towards this shared goal?
It was great because I had written the manifesto and I had gone on your podcast, but I didn't have any next steps. I'm still just bothered by the lack of books, and I didn't know where to go next. So having Christina jump on gave instantly a path forward for us. And when I wrote my manifesto, I just said we need books for middle schoolers and we need a name for it. So we came up with Young Teen Lit. We thought was a good name that really reflected the kids we're looking for. We had to but we had to agree on what ages, because really middle grade serves 8 to 12-year-olds. And I think young adult is serving 14 to 18-year-olds. So it's really almost the 13-year-olds that are the ones left out. But we decided 12-year-olds are on the cusp and 15-year-olds are on the cusp of both of those categories. we really want to focus in on 13 and 14-year-olds, but it hits 12 to 15. So we had to agree on kind of the age and the name, and then we have our 5 criteria of what we think we need to see in more books. So that was the next step that we did. We wrote another article for the Teen Librarian Toolbox, and we sort of unveiled our 5 official criteria of what we're looking for.
I'm so excited to go deep into the weeds here on this, because I think when you work with these students and you realize there are glaring gaps in publication, not in your collection. This isn't about you guys just didn't have enough money to buy the books. This is like you were looking for the books and they weren't there. This is a rather unique problem. It's not unusual to talk to school librarians who are like, I don't have enough money. My space is too small. You know, these are a lot of our problems can be fixed with money. A lot of our problems can be fixed with time and commitment and a full-time certified school librarian. But you're talking about a completely new problem. In an article you co-authored, you wrote, quote, "We have identified a disconnect between what publishers want to publish, what authors want to write, and what kids actually want to read," end quote. If there is one thing school librarians know all too well, and that is what our students want to read, and especially when we can't find it.
We've had some interesting conversations since we have gotten together and started talking to authors and members of the publishing industry. And I feel like we've learned a lot. And maybe Marcia can speak to, I know you've been going to conferences and talking to some of the publishing companies.
Yeah, I think when we talk to authors, there's a lot of authors like, oh, I want to write about a 14-year-old. I want to write about a 15-year-old. But the publishers tell them, oh, no, they have to be 12. The book has to sell to a third grade. A parent of a third grader has to be able to buy this. So the books get marketed as, for 3rd to 7th graders. But one of our pillars is like, if it is good for a 3rd grader, it is not good for a 7th grader. I mean, they may read it. It may be a fine book, but it is not for them if it is for a 3rd grader. And it also, at the same time, we've heard from many authors that the publishers absolutely tell them to make the main character 17. 100% you pick up a YA book and that character is 17 or older. Like, it is extremely rare to find 14, 15, or even 16 is rare. And we felt that there's now a research study that shows that is true. So it's the ages of those characters. The publishers are telling the authors to write them at different levels. And I have gone around. I was at the ALA LibLearnX, and I went to every publisher's booth there. And we had little cards made up that set our criteria, and we need young teen lit. And, I was like, we're looking for this. And almost invariably at every booth, they were like, oh, no, we have books for those kids. And they'd pull out a book, and they would, oh, this is great for middle school. And character is 12. And I'd say, well, they really don't want to read about 12-year-old. Like, that is a non-starter for a 7th and 8th grader. They're not going to read a book. And the covers they're babyish. But they would hand me, but this is really good. The character is 12, but you're going to really like this. And I'm like, well, that's not what we're looking for. And then on the young adult end, they say, oh, our books are all very appropriate for middle school. We make sure that, our books are great for middle school. Look at this one. But it's like, well, it may not be inappropriate, but it's about a 17-year-old. This girl is applying to college. And they would just try to tell us that the books existed. And it feels like they just don't want to hear it, especially at these booths from me, little old me, telling them you don't really have what we're looking for.
Fascinated that you went to LibLearnX, because you're right. I mean, this is a conference where you're going to have an opportunity to go into like the expo and talk to publishers. A
lot of them said, oh, we're talking about this. This is an issue. But then they would try to show me what they thought they had. And, oh, we'll take this back. No, not one person ever responded in any way. Like, we didn't get any emails back. We didn't hear anything back from publishers. And I kind of felt like they didn't receive it real well, that maybe it was, they don't want to hear that they don't have what you want, I
can imagine they would be a little distressed to find out that there's a market they are not serving. Yes, Christina.
Marcia and I are sick of the books with the 12-year-old main characters. We cannot handle another book. They are all in 7th grade. All the middle grade books, middle grade. They're all in 7th grade. They're all 12 years old. Where are the books for our 7th and 8th graders who are looking for characters who are going through things like they are, the transition to high school. But even there's so many changes in 8th grade. And so those are very hard to find. And I would have to say in the past year, Marcia and I have been able to find some more that have 8th grade main characters or 9th grade main characters. So that has been helpful. But we're not serving our student population by not having these books for them.
I mentioned that there was a study at ALA this summer, which I was fortunate to go to in Philadelphia. There was a poster session, and there's a professor named Allie Watkins, and she has done the research and published an article. She looked at the last 10 years of young adult bestsellers, not what award winners, but what kids are actually buying. And she just tracked the age of the characters, and I believe it came out to 90% of characters in young adult books are 16 and up, and an actual decent amount of those are 19, 20, and 21. They're not even 17. They're 18, 19, and 20. And it didn't change. In the last 10 years, it hasn't aged up. It has stayed that way. It's been that way for 10 years. And my real question is, what if we did that for the prior 10 years? I think that's where it happened. Because I remember, like 15 years ago, we had Hunger Games and we had Maze Runner. Those are about 15 and 16-year-olds. Those aren't 17. Speak was longer ago, but we had Speak. We had a 14-year-old character. We had books. When I was starting out in my career, probably in the more early 2000s, from 2000 to 2010, we had all kinds of books with 14 and 15-year-olds in them. And I have a little theory. I think maybe Twilight moved. Young adult has gone to women in their 20s and 30s buying the books, and that's what they're writing for. And I think Twilight was the first one that really grabbed adult women and brought them into the young adult area. But the publishers they know what they're doing. They're marketing. They're buying the book. Women are buying the book. So they're making these characters older, and they're giving them a lot more sexual experiences and college and beyond. And they've left a gap, and I truly think they think there's not a market for it. But I think it's a shame to let the market determine what books exist for teenagers. We are here to support literacy. I hope the publishers are also here to support literacy, but...
So, friends, I'm so glad that Marcia mentioned the poster session at ALA Annual Conference, because I already talked to Allie Watkins, and I gave her my business card, and I introduced myself because I looked at her poster, and I'm like, I would love for you to be on my show. And, these are academics, largely. These are individuals. They are not in school libraries. They are academics. They are writing these based on their research. And I said, we are seeing this in our libraries in real time. Would you please come and be on my show, and we can talk about this? And then Marcia says, I was like, absolutely. She's already got a business card. And I have not reached out to her because I was sort of hoping that she would come to decide to do this. But I think after this episode airs, I'm going to be sending her the recording, and maybe she'll just feel compelled to join us. So I have to say, as the high school librarian in this conversation, when I'm talking to my 9th graders, who really are only 8th graders plus a summer. So when you look at those 9th grade orientations that I do with my 8th graders with a summer, I am sort of in the sort of uncomfortable position of having to explain to these now 9th graders that there is a lot of adult content in this collection, because we have students who are 18 turning 19 when they graduate. And for that reason, but what I'm not saying is we don't have a lot of books for 9th graders because they don't exist. And for me, what I'm noticing, and as somebody who has been reading just solid YA for the past 5 years, ever since this transition that I took, the books that I have, about 90% of them happen in that sweet spot, the summer between junior and senior year. The summer between junior, yes. They're all 17. They all know how to drive. And they're all going to house parties where college students are. That's another big thing. And, I've got to say, my students who really do identify as readers are coming and asking me for books like Colleen Hoover. And these are freshmen, these are sophomores. And I kind of look at them and I'm like, do you know how old the characters are in those books? And they're like, well, my mom's reading it. And I was like, yeah, they're not in college. They're done with college. I kind of looked at them and was like, can you tell me why you want to read that book? And they really can't. I mean, I'm just saying as an aside, my students who want to read Colleen Hoover simply want to read Colleen Hoover because everybody else is reading Colleen Hoover.
Well, Amy, we also have TikTok, book talk, right? I think that really is influencing their book decisions. And I think Jennifer Lagarde had something recently in her blog, right, Marcia? Where she said that she felt like book talk was driving a lot of the age levels in books.
Yeah, I love what she said. She said, this is what's making her grumpy. All the characters in young adult books are 17 and older. And I messaged her, like, yes, we're grumpy too.
Everyone is familiar with YA, young adult, and middle grade, MG, but you are championing young teen lit as outlined in your website. And I'm hoping that you will go into a little bit of depth about the criteria which you have outlined, because I think this would help our audience have a better sense of what it is you so desperately need the publishing industry to recognize as a gap in what's being written right now.
All right. Number one, we kind of touched on it already. We want main characters that are, we want books for kids 12 to 15. We have plenty of 12-year-old main characters. We're not asking for more. We're asking for main characters that are really 8th to 10th grade, because kids want to read up. They want to read up, at least one grade. So main characters that are 14 and 15 are really in demand. And that's what I think people think, oh, you can read an older book because it's they use the word clean. It's clean, but it's not where they're at emotionally, physically, in their life. We're not looking for clean teen lit. That's a different thing. We're looking for edgy and we're looking for real and but we just want it to be about a little bit younger kids, focused on, where you're at when you're a 9th or 10th grader, maybe, instead of as you said, a junior or senior in high school.
Our next criteria is about teens seeing themselves in the books that they are reading. So we would love to see a diversity of characters in young teen lit, and I think the publishing industry has really listened to the call for that. But we want our books to span genres. So we especially need murder mysteries, romance, action, adventure, sports, and humor. That's what they are asking for. So if we could see the diversity in those genres, I think those books would become perfect young teen lit. I mean, if somebody could write A Good Girl's Guide to Murder or Diary of a Wimpy Kid for the 14 and 15-year-old crowd, that would be amazing. I'm not saying both of those together. I'm just saying, for example, though that would be an interesting mashup, they can't get enough of those murder mysteries. And then in terms of romance, my students are still all over The Summer I Turned Pretty. They just can't get enough of that series.
And I have seen, to their credit, I think publishers have heard the romance part. We have seen more romance books coming along that are a little more about a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. There's been some good ones showing up. I can recommend more of those, but I have not seen a murder mystery. There's one murder mystery written by Tiffany Jackson, but they made the character 12. And I'm reading it right now, and it's going to be good. And younger kids are going to be thrilled that there's a murder mystery, but they nudged it down, in my opinion, too far, so that it's more very middle grade. But murder mystery, humor, horror, we haven't even touched on that. I'm not a horror person, but I'll tell you, these kids, they're reading Stephen King at home. They come to the library and they're like, what do you have for me? They don't want a ghost story or a spooky Halloween book. They want something that is in some way their category of horror, and it would be amazing if there could be something in that category.
And we've had authors who have started to send us arcs to read and to talk about on our social media. And one author sent us an audiobook called The Tower. And he told us it's only available as an audiobook. He couldn't get a publisher to pick it up. And I thought it was phenomenal. Again, 12-year-old character, but definitely horror suspense that I think kids would just absolutely love. And I don't understand why no one, snapped that one up. So it's been interesting to see what authors have been sending us too.
Yeah, that's the one in the entire year. I think we have looked at one thing that we would classify as horror that was appropriate for what we're looking for. So that's a huge gap. And there have been books that have been somewhat humorous, but I have seen hasn't been anything that's just flat out funny either that anyone has brought, that we have found or anyone has brought to our attention. So those are big gaps.
So, Christina, you would be more familiar with this author, Jonathan Rand, and Michigan Chillers and American Chillers. And when I was in elementary, those books were very popular, but they always had to do with, they were horror, so Chillers, similar to
R.L. Stine.
Yeah, similar to R.L. Stine, but they are dealing with very creature-based horror. So the monster isn't a person. The monster is a thing, is a creature, is something that the students would not see on a regular basis. But when you look at horror in YA, it is always another person who is the monster. And this has just been in what I have been reading, that I noticed that in elementary school scares, it's been a creature or a monster, but in high school, you're dealing with people who are monstrous, behaving monstrous. How do we bridge that?
I truly don't know, but I swear to you, if somebody can figure that out, they will make a ton of money. Like, this is I think an unusual story. Jerry Craft, author of New Kid, and he was at the Georgia Summer Institute this year, and I kind of got his ear, and I said, you wrote about 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. Like, you've done it. You've actually been Young Teen Lit. And I was showing him my card and our criteria. And he said, well, what do you need? What's missing? And I'm like, well, humor is missing. And I said, but also horror. And he's like, I can write horror. I'm like, Jerry Craft? That's amazing. I have no idea if he's really going to turn around and listen to that. Jerry Craft assured me that he could write horror for that age group.
From your lips to God's ears,
Jerry,
right?
If you're out there.
I'm telling you, let's talk about your third criteria, because I'll tell you what, as the high school librarian, I'm right on board with this one as well.
I can talk about this one because this is my baby here, in that we would like the books to be shorter, please. So we're saying 180 to 300 pages in length. It seems like that 300 is the magic number. A lot of books that are being published are around, just a little over 300, but still, it looks like a lot for students. It's intimidating, and we need something that's going to grab and keep their attention. So we're looking for books that are in this page range.
I say the shorter, the better. I read reviews, I order books, they all come in, they're all huge. I know that 80% of my students, that is a non-starter. They won't even look at a book that's that huge. So we need shorter books. We need good books that are edgy and right for our age group. We're not looking for shorter middle grade books. We're looking for shorter books for teenagers. I think the long books probably is part of the adult women are buying these books, and they love a good 700-page fantasy or whatever. They like a big one. But real kids, the vast majority of real kids, we're competing with Instagram Reels and TikTok, and the attention span is different.
Let's talk about your fourth criteria, because I know we've started to mention this, but it really does matter, because it's oftentimes what first gets the interest of our readers is what they see. Yeah,
that fourth criteria, we already said it. The covers should not be cartoonish or childish. If it looks like, quote, middle grade, it does not fly in middle school, and it certainly doesn't fly in high school. So please make the covers look older, look more more like a young adult book.
And that doesn't mean they can't be illustrated, because when I think about a lot of my horror books, they aren't like photographic. Those are illustrated, but they are not cartoonish. So, no. Absolutely.
And honestly, a lot of the horror mystery books, they have just like jagged type and blood running down. There isn't a picture, and that's good. Like, if it's got that, bloody looking cover and you go, oh, it's a murder mystery, that's great. Like,
or I'm thinking about lots of trees. Because it always happens in the woods. A lot of this happens in the woods.
So our last criteria is about having books written in verse, encouraging students to read graphic novels, but we also want the books to reflect how teens communicate with each other through messaging and social media. So the books that seem to attract them are the ones that have the kids text messaging back and forth, which makes it easier to read. There's less print on the page, and that goes the same for the verse novels. So the verse novels often tend to be shorter, not always, but that is another selling point. And at my school, the verse novels are so popular that the kids keep bugging me to make a verse novel section. I have them all in their genres, and maybe when I move to the new building, maybe that will be something that I will do there, but they're so immensely popular. And the graphic novels too. Kids love the graphic novels. For our Troy Berry program this year, it was the first time ever that a graphic novel won Steve Shankin's Bomb. So that just shows you how much they love their graphic novels.
Yes, he's also been a guest on the show.
He's amazing.
Yes. So I have to say, I've struggled with this also because the novels in verse physically are oftentimes the fattest books we have in the collection. But there's only, I actually have to do the visual. Like, so when I'm book talking novels in verse, first of all, I do have like a list that the kids can look up in Destiny, novels in verse, and it has all of the novels in verse because these are books which fly. They absolutely, because they just go through them. But visually, it's hard because you have to get over that hurdle that they see a fat book. They see a fat book and you're like, no, but you don't understand. There's like 7 words on this page. It's a different kind of sales pitch when the kids see a novel in verse because you have to then prove to them, you open it up. And I do that with Poet X as an example with my students because they read that for class. And I hold up my copy of Poet X and I said, this book takes 3 hours and 27 minutes to read. And they look at me and they're like, what are you talking about? I said, this book takes 3 hours and 27 minutes to read. How do I know? Because I listened to it as an audiobook. It's a novel in verse. Open it up. And they're like, because there aren't many words on the page. And they're like, wait, that only takes 3 hours to read? I said, it does. Sometimes I do that. I'll pull up the length of the audiobook because they don't even realize how much longer it takes to read a book when you're also trying to scroll Instagram at the same time and listen to whatever it is that's in their headphones or their AirPods because they're trying to do something else in addition to reading the book at the same time.
I'm stealing that strategy, by the way. Good idea. I love giving them like a time. Like, this is how long it's going to take. You read 15 minutes or 10 minutes in class every day. You do the math and figure out how long this is going to take you.
And high schoolers, students do that too. They're like, well, if this book has this many pages and I'm supposed to read 20 minutes, or they say, oh, well, how many pages do I have to read a day to get done by the time this is over? Forget about the fact you might enjoy the book and just read it. I don't know if any of you read faster than your class when you were in high school, but we were supposed to read Of Mice and Men. I finished it like the first day it was handed to me, and then we had to spend 2 weeks discussing it, and I'm like sobbing in the corner because I've read the book the first day you handed it to me, and my class is taking 2 full weeks to parse this out, one blessed chapter at a time. All right, so let's go ahead. What I love about this conversation is it involves both our middle school and our high school librarians. Young Teen Lit bridges that middle and high school collection in that these books would be excellent to build out what we currently have on our shelves.
Yes, and I've definitely got high school librarian friends who are completely on board. I have a little book club of teachers and librarians that we run out of my local children's bookstore, which is Little Shop of Stories in Decatur, Georgia. And we call it Young Teen Lit, and I've got Robbie Barber, who's, you had mentioned earlier, a high school librarian, and several other high school librarians have been coming, as well as middle school folks, and we meet monthly and talk. So if you're in Georgia, around Atlanta, we have a club in person to talk about books. But yeah, the high school librarians are, I feel like, 100% on board. They know, they see it. They want books for their kids as well.
Yes.
So that we do have one more criteria that we added. So we started off with 5 and noticed how publishers, authors, booksellers reacted to our criteria. And we went back and wrote a second article. So we called it Take 2, Move Over Middle Grade Take 2. Because we felt there was something missing from our criteria that people weren't getting. Like, Marcia and I knew it. And it's almost like this ineffable quality. It's like really hard to define. It's like when you read a really good young teen lit book, you know what it is. And there are a lot of books that fit our 5 criteria. But to Marcia and I, still didn't feel like something that kids would love. Like, I think that's at the basis of what we're trying to do is we want books that kids are going to get excited about and are going to be running to the library and wanting to check out or like hand over their checked out copy to their friend so their friend can get it. And so we added the 6th criteria where we wanted the books to have attention grabbing plot lines. We wanted to start off grabbing your attention, start off in the action. We are asking for short chapters. Cliffhangers at the end of the chapter would be amazing too, because that propels the reading. We're looking for something that has mass appeal. And as Marcia said earlier, we are competing with social media. We're competing with their online games. You know, we need something that's going to grab their attention immediately and then keep it.
Can I just say, I'm really excited that Christina mentioned this other article because, friends, our show notes are actually not going to be that long because Christina and Marcia created a website. God love them. Thank you so much. This is where you're going to want to bookmark this website and do that deep dive. So if you want to, you know, when you realize all of the homework that these 2 amazing school librarians have done, but they've then put it all in one destination, one shared repository of outstanding writing and book lists. So I can't emphasize this enough. I'm like looking at this website and I'm going, this is it. It encapsulates everything. You've got one place you can go to get those book recommendations and what we can do moving forward. But I'm very grateful Christina and Marcia have collaborated, not just in theory, but they've also created a place where you can do this deep dive for yourself. Yes, you were going to say, Marcia.
I think I was going to add on that we are reading books all the time. People are maybe finding us on Blue Sky and Instagram and telling us, I wrote a book that's perfect for this age group. And it will be about a 14-year-old. And we will get it and we will read it and we will say, you know, that was a fine book, but I'm not going to, it just didn't grab. It was not a grabber. And I think there are some books about 14 and 15-year-olds, and they're great and they will have their audience, but we are specifically looking for the next kind of Good Girl's Guide to Murder, you know, Wimpy Kid. We're really looking for things that are going to fly and make kids, you know, want to read again. And I kind of keep hearkening back. I feel like there was a golden age when we had Maze Runner and we had Hunger Games, that like these huge hits were pouring out and they were appropriate for young teens. I have to add Neil Shusterman books like Unwind and Scythe and those series. They're big and thick. They're good reader books, but boy, do they challenge your thinking. You know, society is not what you thought it was. They're out to get you. You're fighting back. They grab you, and kids will still, you know, fight over some of these books. So our criteria 6 is just like, we're just really looking for things that they're gonna be a hit. And that's what we want to emphasize. And if you follow us on our social media, Blue Sky and Instagram, we are putting out those ones that we think, you know, every middle school library needs this book. It's going to grab kids' attention.
I'm really curious, because you did mention in one of your SLJ articles that you have had conversations when you're restocking and sending your feedback when you've had book fairs. I have not had a book fair in a very long time, but I'm curious, have you ever been able to connect with when you're doing a book fair in your spaces and talk to the publishers about this?
I haven't talked so I do Scholastic book fairs. I have not talked to the publisher. I've just talked to my rep, but I really have appreciated recently how Scholastic has had more young adult selections. I feel like Scholastic does do a good job of having books for the 8th graders, the 7th and the 8th graders at the fair. Again, these are all the books that have the 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old characters. But I appreciate that they have those selections now to keep them interested. But I think that would be, that's something I haven't thought about, is talking to them about what we would like them to publish and send to us. You've given me another idea.
Well, and I'm curious, we've got a captive audience. Most everybody who tunes in are school librarians. So what is it that the two of you who have championed this cause, what do you feel we can do as school librarians to move this publishing trend in favor of more young teen lit being published?
I really think the issue lies at the publishing level. So I think it's, whenever you're at a conference and you're walking around, ask for it. Say, do you have horror books? Do you have books with 14-year-old characters? And they'll flutter around looking and they won't find one. I guess it's a lot of asking. We have hope that the hashtag Young Teen Lit and It's Time for Young Teen Lit will get used more and more, and that those will take off. We are doing a few other things behind the scenes, things we've learned about. Christina can talk a little bit about the book industry standards group.
Sure. I think what other librarians can do is help support us by connecting us with other people. So I sent out an email to the Michigan Association of School Librarians about Young Teen Lit, and somebody on the listserv shared my name with someone in Cherry Lake Publishing in Michigan, who then shared with me a contact at the Book Industry Study Group, which Marcia and I knew nothing about. And so we had to research, and we learned about BISAC codes and all of this, because this is more of the bookseller side. It's not the librarian side. So we are working with them right now to launch in December a young teen interest merchandising category. So then publishers will be able to label in their metadata that their book hits this young teen interest category, and then booksellers going in on their end in their system they could search young teen interest, pull up those books, and then start creating young teen interest categories in their bookstores. So we have that on the horizon in the publishing industry that we're hoping might start something.
We also, speaking of bookstores, we've had some really great interactions with children's booksellers, and we were invited onto a Zoom with some of the most prominent children's bookstores around the country, and every single owner of these bookstores agreed, they want Young Teen Lit. They have parents come in and they're like, my daughter's in 7th grade. What should I get? I'm scared of young adult. It doesn't look right for her. And the booksellers themselves said, we don't know what to put. Even if we made a category, we don't know what to put there because we don't know we get it. They're 12 and they're 17, but we're not sure what we would put in the middle, but they want it. And also, this was really interesting. The ABA, the American Booksellers Association, has some kind of summer institute for booksellers, and they had panel discussion about the need for Young Teen Lit, and they called it by name and they referenced our work, and it was standing room only, and it had so many people at it that the fire marshals came in and took people out, and unfortunately, fortunately, they let the booksellers stay, and the publishers who were lurking are the ones that had to leave because it's really, an institute for the booksellers. But they had a huge session about the need for Young Teen Lit, moderated by Diane Capriola, who is the owner of the Little Shop of Stories in Decatur. But they're working on it with us. That's been a really nice thing. I mean, the booksellers are as interested in it as we are, and they would love to have more for those kids and more things they could recommend to, the parents and young teenagers who are coming into their stores. So talking to your booksellers, asking for it at bookstores too. I think if booksellers ask for it, maybe they get farther than librarians do. I'm not sure.
Remembering correctly that you've talked to authors who have been directed to age up their characters or age down the characters. I was reading your writing, and I seem to recall that there are authors who would love to write for this age, but they have been directed by their publishers who pay them to make their characters a certain age.
Oh, they absolutely are. And I've talked to multiple authors. Nick Stone was the first one, and I ran into her at my bookstore, and she's the one that explained to me. She said, oh, no, they won't let me write a book about a 14-year-old. She said, they will tell me it has to sell to a third grader, it has to be 12, or it has to be 17. She's the one that told me that. I met an author at ALA, and his name's Matt Eicheldinger, and he's former teacher, and he's written some really funny cartoony books that look more middle grade. But I was talking to him, and he said, oh, I've got sort of climate fiction coming out. And he said, the character's 16. And I was like, oh, this sounds really good. I said, why is the character 16? And he said, oh, the publisher told me she had to turn 17 in the book. I was like, why? Why can't she be 15? They told him that, and he was just like, oh, so I said, okay, because I don't, they're just like, hey, whatever will get me published. But they told him that, and he didn't know that was an issue. And I said, how that? He's like, the book's not finished. And I was like, we would love it if it would be 15, my opinion about.
So I want to make sure that we give our listeners some actionable items, some things, I love a to-do list. Give me some direction as to how best to channel my energies in a way that could hopefully affect some change in this industry that we work with.
Well, check us out on social media. And for those of you new to Blue Sky, you may not be aware of feeds in Blue Sky. So there is a Young Teen Lit feed that you can sign up for. And then that will show across the top of your Blue Sky app. And you can go to that feed and see what people are posting using that hashtag. So it would be really helpful if you read a really good book that you feel like fits our criteria, post about it and share it with people, either on Blue Sky or Instagram. We would love that. Or if there's something that you like that you want to share with us, send us a direct message on either of those. I know all of us as librarians have a giant to-be read list, but we can move things up to the top if it seems like a worthy candidate.
Yeah, I think actually creating a post on Blue Sky or Instagram, hashtagging it Young Teen Lit, and talking about a book, whether it's recent or old. We've had librarians post videos. Just last week, somebody posted a video, and she's saying, I just heard about this. I totally agree, and I want to tell you about a book I love, and it's Alone by Megan Freeman. And that's a book in verse, and it is a great Young Teen Lit book. Middle school kids love it, and she did her own, and she hashtagged us. We would love to have every day librarians putting out books they love for middle school kids or, ninth graders and hashtagging it and reposting. In Blue Sky, it turns out liking things does not affect your algorithm. People need to actually repost your posts for that to make you show up more. So in Blue Sky, it's super important that you actually repost, and you don't have to say anything. You can just hit the, repost it. But the more that I feel like the more people jump on the bandwagon and use that hashtag, the more publishers may start to follow that hashtag and follow us. So that's the most actionable thing that I can think of.
And don't forget to also include tagging the authors and the publishers in your posts, because we've had the authors and publishers comment or like our posts because of what we've been saying about their books.
Well, especially if you, I'll be honest, as somebody who always loves to broadcast when I love a book, But there is that extra step where you have to go and find them on social media to do that. But the reward is when they do see that their efforts are being appreciated. And so I'm going to say right now, it may take an extra minute to look up the author on Instagram and on Blue Sky. Can I just ask, have we walked away from X? Is it really just, because I'm finding right now when I look up authors, I'm not seeing them on X at all. Or if they are, these are very dated posts.
I don't go there anymore. I've stepped away, so I don't know, but I'm not there.
Okay. Same here. It really does seem like a lot of the authors have moved.
So I'm very excited because I think we are all going to see each other at AASL.
Let's hope. We've submitted a poster session, so fingers crossed that will be accepted.
We are writing an article for Hornbook. They wanted an article about what makes a good young teen book. So we're excited for that.
Wow. So, friends, I can't emphasize this enough. Show notes. Definitely take a look at our show notes because we want to start to make an impact. And one of the best ways to do that is to reward those authors and those publishers who are actively trying to fill a need that exists. And so if you are regularly finding a book that fits this criteria, please don't hesitate to share it out. I can't wait for all of us to get together at AASL. St. Louis can't wait. The countdown begins. Friends, we've got a little bit of our summer left. Let's let listeners know where they can find you and reach out.
My school Instagram, which is largely run by library leaders, is at dhmslibrary. And I'm sure you can find my email and our contact information in the show notes, but our Young Teen Lit website is just youngteenlit.com.
Fantastic. Christina?
And then my school library Instagram account is at Troy MS Media. And then on Blue Sky, I am at Media Logger.
Fantastic. Listen, I am so excited that we're going to see everybody in St. Louis. This is going to be fantastic. Christina, Marcia, thank you so much for making this message and having it coalesce around a website, and to have the two of you spearheading this effort really makes me think we are hopefully going to start to see in the coming months and years more books which are going to support our young teen readers.
Amy, thanks for being our matchmaker.
Thank you so much, and I will see you all in St. Louis.
Yes, right. Let's hope.
Thank you so much.
If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. I hope you take a look at the link to Junior Library Guild in our show notes. Use the code UNITED15 to receive 15 free books with your very first shipment. Next week, I am very excited to be joining the amazing school librarians of Missouri at their summer professional development program, Kickoff in Columbia. Be sure to tune in next Friday, August 1st, and episode 331, Spotlight Mazel, where I'll showcase the wonderful Missouri Association of School Librarians. I hope you will tune in.